Welcome into another Swamp247 Commit Breakdown, and this one a very special one in lieu of our normal Friday Swamp247 recruiting podcast, but we couldn't not do this. Gators land a massive surprise commitment at midnight on Friday, November 11th. Florida landed a commitment from elite quarterback Jaden Rashada, who was previously committed to Miami. A decommitment, Blake, was expected, but not a commitment. And now the Gators are up to number 8 overall in the country in 2023 team recruiting, as they have the number 17 overall prospect, number 6 quarterback, and number 5 player in the state of California on the independent 24/7 sports rankings locked up in their class. So, Blake, as we always do, I'm going to look to you for a breakdown of the Gators' newest edition, but just tell me just how big this one is for Florida.
Big for many reasons. Getting the highest ranked commitment in your class is always big on its own. Every fan as far as Florida fans has been asking, where's the 5 stars? And I know if you pull up Jaden Rashada's 24/7 sports profile, you'll look at it, you'll see 4 stars, and you'll think like, man, Blake does not account. That's true. He is a 4-star right now, but the rankings as far as how 24/7 goes is the 5-star list expands as the cycle goes on. So near the end of the cycle, there's somewhere around 32, 30 ballpark. There's some give and take on that number, but 32 is probably the median number there of 5 stars on the rankings there whenever things are all said and done. So right now, Jaden Rashada is in that 5-star ranking. Whenever things are all said and done, number 17 overall. From that standpoint, that's big for the class. You're also landing a huge position of need in the quarterback room. The quarterback is easily one of your most important positions when it comes to football and recruiting and building a class around, a guy like that. And Jaden Rashada checks off a lot of those boxes. I mean, this is a guy that's thrown for over 2,000 yards this year as a senior. I think it was 23-8 interception touchdown ratio there for him so far. Has 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground. So you're getting a big time playmaker. You're adding a second quarterback, with Jaden Rashada now in the fold and Marcus Stokes already in the fold. So Billy Napier is doing a good job building talent in those rooms, quarterback room, obviously defensive line room, wide receiver, all those things that Florida is starting to build, those areas of need, really trying to stockpile that talent. So, with all those things in mind, this is a big commitment for Florida as far as the X's and O's part that he brings, but you've landed a crown jewel in your recruiting class. You never know what kind of doors those may open as far as, other targets out there. Does that, make guys that may be committed to other schools that Florida's still kicking the tires on? Does it, cause them to give Florida a second look? All those things we'll see how they play out. But, from traditional standpoints here, landing that bell cow type of quarterback, that polarizing type of quarterback, like what a Jaden Rashada could do for Florida's class, it's not going to be anything negative there. Let's say that. There's really no negatives you can take from that. So huge get for Florida. I feel kind of like we're bringing up a little bit of shades of Roger Kearney here, who, spurned Florida early on. With Jaden Rashada picking Miami, Florida seemed to finish second there for him. Continue to kick the tires there. Miami season going the way it's gone probably hasn't helped things. And maybe not so much of the season wins and losses record, but I think when you look at the offense, you're seeing some regression there. You're seeing, something to where it's behind closed doors. Jaden Rashada has been given pause on his former commitment to Miami, enough to look around. I actually picked up, during the last couple of days of when really things started to seem like something was fishy here. If you followed around on Swamp247, I mentioned that last night, that there had seemed to be some fishy things going on here. Rashada actually popped up at another SEC school that was not Florida earlier this fall. So there's definitely been some looking around there. Florida had big need for quarterback. Already have those strong relationships with guys like Billy Napier, Rob Sale, even as someone he connected with whenever he was on his official visit, Ryan O'Hara, who is an off-the-field guy for Florida but handles those quarterbacks and the recruiting for quarterbacks really well. So, perseverance there for Florida. They've flipped another guy from an in-state school. They've flipped guys from Miami. They flipped guys from Florida State, UCF, and I think that's about everyone. They flipped another from South Carolina, but Florida's flipping guys. We're getting towards the early signing period. You're flipping guys from in-state rivals. You're flipping guys that are big positions in need. So huge win for Billy Napier and the Florida staff. I can't say enough good things about this edition.
Absolutely. And maybe even a mention for Andy Jean, who wasn't a flip, but a guy who Miami was at the time at least pursuing quite heavily and Florida won. This is a time right now where momentum definitely seems to be favoring the Gators, a group that was not necessarily in this position just a couple months ago. And if you remember correctly, and you're listening to this show, it was just on June 26th when Rashada committed to Miami. There seemed to be a mass freak out among Florida fans just about the direction of the program's recruiting under its new coaching staff. If I remember correctly, Gators were ranked somewhere in the low 40s at the time. They had just lost out on Kearney, who was committed to FSU. They lost out on Rashada on the 26th, who committed to Miami. And there were a couple other situations in that time frame that led a pretty loud group of Florida fans to be seemingly disappointed. Talk about an about face, Blake. This is a group that's ranked in the top 10 now. They just jumped over Miami by stealing Miami's top quarterback commit. My question, however, though, is about Florida's roster construction, or class construction, if you will. It's clear that they're doing quite well, but now they have an abundance, especially at quarterback, where they have two guys committed. Are we going to see Florida try and stick with its two quarterback approach in this class? Are we likely to see them just try and land one? How would you evaluate this in the early going?
I would evaluate it. I haven't really dug into it very much. Whenever you have a guy that commits at midnight, East Coast time, and you're still working till 2 a.m., I haven't really dug quite into that just yet. Been trying to play a little bit of catch up there with just the Rashada news and all the things going on there. But I, at least early on, think that Florida goes for two. I think that they want to keep Stokes. Obviously, Rashada's in the fold now. I think that right at this point, it's about pushing the roster for Florida. And where Marcus Stokes probably isn't as a guy that has as high of a ceiling and probably needs more work as far as his game and tidying things up. Florida still felt like he was a guy that fit into their offense, fit into their scheme. So I don't see them spurning a guy or turning a guy away that they do feel like, yes, he needs some help and, he needs some coaching up. But I don't think that that's a guy that they're going to, push out of the class. Marcus Stokes has been pretty vocal so far on social media as far as welcoming Jaden Rashada. He had something on his Instagram or something like that was like, let's work. So, he seems to be, very open to the competition that it brings having a guy like Jaden Rashada. I would think right now that Florida goes with two quarterbacks. And, even then, there's the outside chance of, what's going on with Anthony Richardson in the NFL. There's been some talk of that. So I would think that Florida, regardless of what Anthony Richardson does, I would think that probably plays some into a factor of just maybe the unknown of what goes on there, to where you would rather have a second guy to keep that quarterback room and the depth going in the right direction that you want, not have to maybe go into the portal and have a guy that you've gotten out of high school that you can develop and, really kind of put through the ringer through his 3-4 years in high school, or in college. So I think that right now Florida sticks with both of those guys. We'll see how things play out going forward if I hear anything different. But early returns on that seems that, I think you could expect both of those guys to be in the class.
Florida now up to 23 total commitments. They jumped Miami to number 8 overall in the 2023 class, according to 247 Sports. Blake, any final thoughts on this one? This is a massive commitment for the Gators, and one that really, I think, ties a bow on some of those summer struggles that had fans somewhat concerned. I'll give you the floor one last time.
I think that there's some credit due to this coaching staff with just the way that, there are websites out there like the one that we work for that, has, info and message boards, and their social media somewhere, everywhere now. Florida kind of got their payback, so to say, on, maybe the blindsidedness of a Cormani McClain to Miami, because this was a bit of a blindside. There were some rumblings, nothing that I really, I even said on the Swamp247 message board, I always believe it when I see it on the Jaden Rashada flip, decommitment. I had heard a decommitment was possible. I was not expecting a flip. We had a story that was ready just in case something happened, just because there was enough smoke, and when there's smoke, there's fire. So I think credit to this coaching staff for, being able to do things in the shadows in a day and age of where social media, and it's really hard to keep things quiet in this day and age of recruiting, and just, there's so many different reasons of why it's tough to do that. So I think a big tip of the cap to that Florida staff for being able to work in the shadows here and pull the rug out on, an in-state rival like that, taking one of their top commitments out of the class. And I just think that that's something that should be commended.
Absolutely. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Swamp247 Commit Breakdown. As always, keep it locked on our YouTube page and on the site, swamp247.com, for all things Florida Gators. We're covering Florida football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, obviously, for all of those sports, as well as putting some content up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as YouTube to make sure that you have all things Florida Gators. We would also encourage you to head on over to swamp247.com, subscribe, and check out the message board that Blake mentioned. We have thousands of people who are active in that community. And if you want the full scoop on all things Florida, that is the way to get it, as we're constantly sharing extra information over there as well. But again, for Blake Alderman, my name is Jacob Rudner. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Swamp247 Commit Breakdown Show, and we will see you on the next one.